Welcome to the REROLL Multiple Martial Arts podcast, where we explore the intersections between martial arts, society, and culture. I'm Elliot.
I'm Danny.
And Danny, today I want to talk about racism, prejudice, and double standards in MMA and UFC, and in particular, most recently, the whole thing with, Rose Namajunas and Zhang Weili in particular. It's then with, the pre-fight trash talking, Rose made some comments that are dead, then read, and, saying Zhang Weili is a puppet of the, Chinese Communist Party, and, her camp is like, whatever, and also like they're also saying, yeah, the government doesn't do anything for us. They don't support us. No, they, by default, as an international athlete, they have to put on a good relationship with the government. But at the end of the day, they're just another athlete. And so I wanted to talk about that and everything that transpired at the event. So I wanted to talk about. Let's just start off with the boos. When Zhang Weili came out, people were booing, and I was like, man, that's like pretty backwards, I think. And those that I was looking online, reading what people were saying, and some people would say, well, you know what, Rose is the home person. She's the American home court, and people are going to boo the away person who also happens to be a champion from China. Dee, what do you think about that response?
I was watching it with my daughter, and neither one of us are into the game of projecting nationalism into sports. So that when she was little, and I remember the moment we're watching the World Cup soccer, and everyone cheers for the respective country. And she was cheering for like Argentina or something, and everyone was like, "What's wrong with you?" And I could tell that she was just being silly, and she was a little girl, like 6. And she was just getting under everyone's skin because she was cheering for the other team. And at 6, I think she was just being silly. But what I found interesting is that at 6, they were telling her, you're supposed to cheer for X country because that's your country. And she was really confused. Like, I don't know what this is about. But she was aware that it was pissing people off. Like, grown men and women were upset at this 6-year-old little girl for not cheering for the country that she was supposed to. Anyway, that format is replicated all around the world. So we project nationalism onto countries. We project nationalism onto sports. And what I felt that weekend was that cycle. Unfortunately, we can't untangle the rhetoric of nationalism from the rhetoric of race and racism. They were born simultaneously. The concept of the nation state co-constructed the concept of race. And we project that racial construct onto the nation. So it becomes an ugly thing. It's almost impossible to be nationalistic and not be borderline racist. Anyway, to your point, or to your question, which I'm long-winded, is I was catching that, and I was really uncomfortable because when my daughter asked me, who are you cheering for? I was like, I like both of them. I am cheering for both. I don't want anyone to lose because I like Zhang Weili. Like, I really cheer for her. I don't know, I'm amazed by her athleticism, her technique. Any fight promo where she's working out, I'm just jealous. I was like, I wish I could work out like you. In fact, I was telling my daughter, I think she posed this question: who would you want to go train with? And I was like, oh my goodness, I would want to go to Zhang Weili's camp. Zhang Weili, like, I think I would learn so much from her. I would want to be like her, devoted student. Anyway, that I'm a fan of her. So I was upset when the boos came out. I understood them because I was like, oh no, people, like, these are amazing athletes. Don't get caught up in this nationalism of us versus them. And don't turn this into a racial thing.
Mhm.
And it became that.
Mhm. It's I think boos, yeah, it's sports. People boo the opposing team or the people they don't like. Someone said, "Hey, when Stephen Wonderboy Thompson fought, Darren Hill in UK, he was booed too." Or like, when people go to Brazil, Brazil is notorious for booing everybody, not Brazilian. And but I think, but I think one thing huge here is the pre-fight fight talk, and the still people are still saying better than red. And I'm like, okay, all right. See, I mean, that goes into what I'm trying to say. And we have to understand that both Rose and Weili are um, represented by Sucker Punch Entertainment. They're the same management company, and so we got to say that there is some relationship. And of course, on Instagram, Sucker Punch congratulated both Rose, and acknowledged that the simpleton mindset is it the simpleton mindset shown that night she competed as a guest in our country was disgraceful. Not talking about booing or rooting for Rose, but that hateful rhetoric all the Chinese athletes experienced was shameful. And so, yeah, there was boos, but I think it was more than that. And I think we have to understand that in the beginning, I watched the early prelims because I wanted to check out the Asian fighters. A few fighters from Shanghai UFC PI, and also some other fighters. There's a couple Mongolian fighters, and the only fighter that won was the last prelim guy, um, who had back-to-back, first round knockouts. He's from Mongolia. He's a beast, right? But it was good to see. But none of those people, at least me watching the screen, I did not hear any boos. There was a lot of cheering. But it could be that pre-prelims, no one goes to the early prelims except the hardcore fans. And so it could be that the hardcore fans were into it for the sport. And then later, the more general public, the more casual people, all that stuff. Kamaru Usman, he's an American. He was booed. Yeah, yeah, Masvidal is the hometown guy, Florida, Miami guy. But I mean, we can't just say that, oh, we boo anybody who's not American, So, um, and hey, Kamaru did a really good job. Both Rose and Kamaru, I respect their talent. It was amazing to see. And sorry, I'm a little, I'm kind of, I need to lay all this stuff out. Lastly, um, one of the huge double standards is if people are so offended by so-called communism. I mean, yeah, I'm not a fan of the CCP. I'm not a fan of authoritarian governments. I'm a yeah, I'm a fan of socialism and communism in a non-authoritarian context. But regardless, anyway, that's for another conversation. Then how come people did not boo Valentina Shevchenko? She's from Kyrgyzstan, who identifies as Russian, whose dad served in the Soviet Navy. That's as red as you can get. Yet people don't talk about that. People don't. Rose had trained with her earlier and said, "Oh, nothing but respect for Valentina." All this stuff. I love training with her. He didn't say any, talk trash, or and so I think there's a lot of double standards here, where yeah, people don't talk about the redness of Valentina Shevchenko. Um, what do you think, Danny?
I agree. I agree that there's a double standard, but that double standard to me is based on not understanding global politics and using this fictive or incomplete understanding of us versus them, us being good, them being bad. And you choose a different villain um, each generation. So when I was growing up, Russia was the bad guy. I had no concept of China. I mean, I knew things were made in China, and all we had was a rhetoric of like products that were made of lower quality. That was the rhetoric. But anyway, I'm just giving you context. China didn't have anything to do with like global politics. I was too little and too unaware to know that China was a communist bloc. I think that's how it is today. So that people think of China as the bad guy because we've built China up that way. We just ended this presidency, the former number 45, built China in that way. Um, and we do not carry as a country a more complete understanding of global politics. So that Russia maybe is a bad guy, supposedly, and I say bad guy for a whole country. That's the sexist in me, I guess. But I'm thinking like it's a country that we're not supposed to like. But then if we ask them why, most people are going to say because they interfered with our elections. They're not talking about communism. And then why are we not supposed to not like China? I'm actually impressed if they say because they're communist. I was like, whoa, that's kind of cool that you have more depth to your hatred. Because what they're gonna say when I heard it, and I've heard it recently, was because they're responsible for this COVID thing. And I put that in quotes because that's not what I believe, but I do understand the incomplete nature of like hatred, or maybe they don't even hate. I don't even know if they hate, because when they boo, I'm like, are you just being ridiculous, silly, or do you really boo because you think this person who is an amazing fighter, Zhang Weili, is responsible for whatever trauma you carry right now? And that's my question. Like, are you really committed? Because when I think about this rhetoric of projecting nationalism onto sports, I go, yeah, the Olympics, it's all about that. But do they hate each other? The athletes themselves party like crazy, like brothers and sisters. They love each other most of the time, but the audience doesn't get it. There's what they try and just kind of project their own nationalism boundaries.
So coming up from here, I do respect. I mean, this is no, I respect Rose's athleticism. I respect her thing. She in a recent interview with Ariel Helwani, she studied, Zhang Weili as closely as possible, her moves and all that stuff. And I was pretty impressed. I was like, wow, the stuff she was saying, how Zhang Weili, she did train with Sanchai for a little bit, and she said, and Rose said, oh yeah, she does a thing that Sanchai does. And I'm like, what? A hip thing? And I'm like, oh, okay, all right, cool. I respect that. And I do have to respect that. Um, in her speech after she won, she did, at least say that, hey, I know didn't mean any disrespect to her personally, that, she respects people of all cultures and backgrounds and stuff like that. So at least that was nice, for her to say that. I think that's responsible, but at the end of the day, we can't control everybody's voice, and we can't control, other people out there and their opinions. But I think at the same time, you said something, that made me think. There's a lot of people that they might not be ill. Their intentions might not be bad, but I think some people are misinformed of um, how it can negatively affect, the environment, and yeah, it could be a joke, but it can also be pretty hateful. And I don't think it takes someone to experience it to know that. And I think I was rooting for Kamaru Usman. I Masvidal. I think I was, impressed with him. Seeing his old videos with Kimbo Slice and stuff like that. That's badass. That's tight. But hearing when the crowd booed Usman, I was like, nah, man, like, like I need Usman to win, and impressively he did. And Masvidal, was he was classy, even in defeat. And in the subsequent interviews, he talked about how Usman changed up his rhythm. Like Masvidal thought Usman was going to do something, but went in for the punch and faked him out. And he said, "Hey, that's good skill, fair and square."
Let me just add something to this conversation that might, I don't think I'll derail it, but I was thinking about your conversation about like racism. And when we look at the history of fighting, we have projected racism onto it. There was a time when like black boxers were not allowed to fight for title shots because whiteness had to be protected. Right now, I'm actually spazzing out on the specific boxers, but there was a title fight with this one super well known black boxer that comes to mind, and we'll probably come up with in a second. But I was thinking about this conversation where like the person who held the title was a white boxer and told him like, we can fight here like in a basement, but I'm not going to give you the title fight. And I was thinking like, yeah, that's how it works, because like they needed to protect the the concept of white superiority. And I think that if you look it up, I think the last name is Johnson,
Mm.
on the black fighter. Anyway, the point is that he was smart about it. He's like, no, we're not gonna do that. If you're not gonna give me a title, I'm not fighting you in the basement. But the point is that like when I look at the UFC, I see that same projection of whiteness being protected and non-whiteness, specifically blackness, anti-black rhetoric as being stigmatized, so that when I saw Kamaru Usman fighting Masvidal, I introduced where my rhetoric or my analysis lies on this like pseudo white category that we project under the term Hispanic and Latino, these almost white people. Um, and I'll probably get a lot of heat for that, but I think there's more space to address it somewhere else. But that's what I felt was happening. Masvidal got to be close enough to white to be cheered. Kamaru not white and therefore black, and it became this white black fight, which we have such a long history on. That that's what was happening. And some people will say, no, that's not what was happening. What was happening is that Masvidal is from Florida. The Florida fans love Florida, and they're gonna back up their dude. All right, there's something of that. But every time we see these fights between these champions that are white and the other person is not white, it becomes the same rhetoric of white versus black. And hopefully people can catch that we're not there yet. I would love to be in a place where this talk is so ridiculous that I'm laughed out. No, we're not there yet, because you can see it. You can see in this idea of like, why are you cheering for the white guy so much and not for the black athlete? And people were like, oh, because the black athlete is so cocky, and he doesn't show good sportsmanship. And I'm paraphrasing because this is what I hear all the time. Like, in fact, I've gotten so tired that I don't watch. I used to go to a local bar to watch the UFC, and I got tired of that
Mm.
rhetoric being around it and alcohol that I was like, I'm done. I'm not going to those places anymore. And that's what I think is embedded in the UFC, not because the UFC is exceptional, because
Mhm.
the UFC is part of the United States and therefore part of that fabric of racism. That's the only reason. And they haven't got out of it. In fact, we still have characters. There was this one ridiculous character still around. I'm not gonna give his name. He goes about doing that rhetoric. He is at the edge of being um racist in his rhetoric. He doesn't go that far. He makes it nationalist by supposedly protecting America, But the reason why he won't is because he knows there's a limit. There's a limit to how ugly you can be. But he does that all the time. As soon as Kumaro won, he came out again, but he's already been beat. So like, why are you gonna do that? And I think that's where I'm at. I'm like, I want to watch the sport, but I do get um, angry at seeing the racist remarks, the racism that is still embedded in it, because I want to believe that we can get there. We can get to a better place, you know?
I think what's amazing is that now that MMA as a sport has grown the past couple of decades so much that there are so many international athletes competing, and I think it's really beautiful. I think it really challenges the American audience because I mean, for the longest time, yeah, okay, the Gracies were always involved at the beginning of UFC and stuff like that, but I think it's great that there's so many it's from all athletes are from all corners of the world now. And just most recently, the past several years, Dagestan has been making its mark, and I'm like, wow, this is amazing. People, and I think it's amazing that we have some amazing fighters from Eastern Europe and from the African continents, and I think it's great. I think that this is what it's supposed to be. I think it's amazing to see, you know, top athletes from all over the world. And I know I'm just kind of saying this, but I think it kind of just hit me, in the past year. I mean, I have to say that, I've always been into UFC, but the pandemic has, got me staying home. So I just watch it like pretty often. And so, were you going to say something?
Oh, I was
Go
agreeing
ahead.
with you.
And so I think it's great. I mean, watching, see, okay. What I like about UFC is that there's a lot of things. Um, Dana White keeps it quote unquote non-political. He doesn't talk about COVID. He doesn't. He says UFC is about entertainment, and I can respect that. Sure, people can critique it, but I can respect that. One fighting championship, they really stress that honor and respect stuff to the point where I think it's kind of sometimes I'm like, is this artificial? Are these guys like, do they really feel that way? Or are they doing it for the camera and for the organization? Like, oh yeah, much respect, hugs and stuff. I'm like, nah, dude, you just got in a fight. Someone just got knocked out. I mean, like, no, there's no hugs and stuff here. I mean, yeah, shake hands, whatever. But okay, yeah, some fights, but after every fight, nah. I think it's really like silly a little bit. I while I really like that, honor a tradition of martial arts, I think one FC uh, kind of forces it a little too much to the point where I don't think it's genuine all the time, and um, I it doesn't. I do like a little bit of trash talking. It makes things exciting. So that's what I have to say.
No, and I think that's where we're at. Okay, so the part that I was saying earlier was that there's something about understanding that two people can go into a ring and fight, and the audience is going to be excited because they've hyped up that fight. The question is, what do you use to hype up that fight? And I'm of the approach that I don't need hype actually. Well, I mean a little bit, but not. I don't think there's a lot necessary. Like it's great sport. We don't need to start talking dirty to one another and call each other bad terms and me talking about your mom or your wife and like get ugly like that. But there's a space that is problematic, and that is the racial discourse around it. So that I was talking about this other fighter, Jack Johnson, 1909. That's the one that I was trying to get at. That it was obviously racialized because he was not allowed to fight for the title because they wanted to protect the title under a white status. And that's where we kind of get this conversation of the great white hope. And I think this space here or the question is, has the UFC moved away from that? My answer is no. Why? Not because the UFC is unique, is because we as a country have not. Tyron Woodley, for example, made it very open that he felt that there was this racial context to his title as champion. He didn't feel that the UFC promoted him as others. I want to open this space without being disrespectful to him and say that he was also capitalizing the way the audience didn't give him that appreciation, because he could make an argument against the UFC as a promotion because you are part of that promotion, but he was unable to control the audience. He was unable to control the audience affinity toward him. Another example is what happened with Amanda Nunes. Ronda Rousey was hyped, as she should have. I'm a huge fan of her contribution to women in MMA. But when she was taken away from the champion title by Amanda Nunes, the UFC could have rallied all their resources to hype her up and show her as the face. And I don't know if they did this on purpose or it was just a drop of their opportunity. However, is it any coincidence that Ronda Rousey codes as white and Amanda Nunes does not code as white, and why we lost an opportunity to have this amazing athlete in Amanda Nunes become the face of championship title in the female woman category, because we didn't get that. And I think that's what I mean about the racism involved in it. And I feel that we have not left it. And I've gotten called out as being someone that overreads things, but I don't think this is a moment of overreading. This is a moment of saying it's too easy to not catch it. You have to work really hard to ignore it. And I think I got not text, it was a Facebook post from someone who's a very low level fan of mixed martial arts. And she posted something about Florida and racism. And I was like, yeah, this is so obvious that this person, that's what she got out of it from her experience in watching the sport. So I think that's where we're at.
I agree. It didn't really click with the Amanda Nunes thing because she accomplished way more than Ronda Rousey has in UFC and in MMA. And, you can see that, sometimes I just look at, UFC. Sometimes I'll look at UFC merch, just to check it out, and the amount of Ronda Rousey shirts that are currently on sale on clearance, they're just trying to get rid of it, is amazing. There's just a ton of merch. There is not the same for Amanda Nunes. How many t-shirt designs are there for Amanda Nunes? Just a few. Rousey, dozens. I'm saying that dozens, like over, like a lot. And so I agree. And Amanda Nunes, unstoppable. Even like Masvidal was like, oh no, I'm not gonna. He doesn't want to train with her because he doesn't want to, be embarrassed. Him, he's a dude. I don't want to get submitted or knocked out by a woman. but yeah, I think this is it's interesting to see. And we'll see as it moves forward. How these things continue to pan out, and hopefully, I think it's healthy to have these conversations. I think it's healthy even for people to talk trash online. I think there's a conversation, and at least there is a conversation. Well, with that said, this has been the REROLL Multiple Martial Arts podcast, where we discuss the intersections between martial arts, society, and culture. Until next time,